Okay, I'm going to be explaining how to work with the emulator, which I think many of you may be using in your classrooms. If you don't have an Android device, the emulator would be the way that you could show the projects that you have developed. So I'm first going to go over to the Connect menu, and I want to talk with you a little bit about the two options that we may see that we'll have to use. We have the emulator here, we have a reset connection, and we have a hard reset. Now that hard reset may be used sometimes when we've had problems and we just can't get anything to work with the emulator. When you click on that hard reset, what that will do is restart everything. The reset connection, that is the connection between the emulator and the MIT App Inventor window. Now before we begin, I also want to show you where your files are actually located. They should be located in your C drive if you paid attention to and you allowed App Inventor to use the default setting. They will be in your C drive, in your program files, in the App Inventor folder. And I want to note to you, this is where your AI Starter exe file is. This is also where some additional commands are. And here is this ADBR restart. And so that might also be a file that you may need to use when you want to do a hard restart on your program. So that's where your files are located. Now, notice that before I do anything else, I have to have my AI Starter. And I've moved it out to the middle of my window so you can see. Before I start the emulator, I always have to have restarted my AI Starter. So I'm going to double click on that, and here's my AI Starter window. Doesn't look real impressive at this point. It says hit Control C. What you might notice later is if we have to do a restart our connection, we may see that our connection to the AI Starter has been shut off. So we're going to go back to the website, and I'm going to tell it that I want to run the emulator. Now remember, this is the very first time I'm running the emulator after having installing it. So the messages I'm going to see right now may not be the messages that you see every time you start your emulator. But there's some fairly predictable things that will happen. Now, my emulator hasn't popped up in the window, but if you'll notice down on my taskbar, my emulator is there. It says 554:build, and if I click on that, that's my emulator. I'm going to watch two things. I'm going to watch my emulator, and I'm also going to watch the connecting message that I'm getting over here. It says that it's starting the Android emulator, and for me to just wait. And in all honesty, this takes a while to get this emulator to work. It's kind of a tricky emulator. So it says the emulator is starting, and they're making sure that the emulator is running. Now it says it started the companion. Now what the companion is this MIT App Inventor 2 website where my project is actually housed. Okay, now this always happens when you install the emulator and run it the very first time. It says my companion app is out of date, so I need to click OK and I need to update it. And it says I should watch the screen. So I'm just going to say OK. Now it comes up with another message and says that the update is now being installed on my device. Watch my device. Now my emulator's kind of gone away, so I'm going to bring it back by clicking on the taskbar. And it says at the same time to watch it, the emulator that is, and watch what it says. It says that when it's done and the update is finished, it now says replace the application. The application you're installing will replace another application. So I'm going to say OK. And what I will notice is it comes up with a message and says install. So I'm going to say OK. I'll let you reinstall the emulator. Now this may take a few minutes. Now the message that's off to the side says when the update finishes, choose done. Don't click on open. That's what I'll do. Then it says click the connect menu and choose reset connection. So all this work I've done, I have not been able to establish a connection between my MIT App Inventor 2 window and my emulator. Now if you'll notice on my emulator, which is out to the side here, there's two options, open and done, and my window over here on the software update says I need to select done. So I'm going to click on done. So now it tells me after I've done done, I should go up to the connect menu and I should choose reset connection. So I'm going to have to, before I do that, I'm going to have to close this window. So I'm going back up to connect. I'm choosing reset connection. Now I have reset that connection. If I go out and I look at my AI starter, it says I killed the emulator, which we did. When we reset the connection, we killed the emulator. So I'm going to close this window. And by the way, notice I'm using the little show desktop area in the front here. Now I'm going to go back and open my AI starter again. Remember, I always have to open the AI starter before I run the emulator. Now I've reset that connection. I'm going to come back up and I'm going to ask to have the emulator opened. And I'm fairly certain that this time the emulator is going to be okay. Remember, this happens when you have to reinstall, and that's what I had just done. I had just installed the App Inventor program. My emulator is there. It says it's starting the emulator. It says it might take a minute or two. We've seen these messages before. Okay, it says the emulator has been started. I need to wait to make sure that the emulator is working correctly. As soon as the emulator has been started, then it will try to establish a connection with my MIT App Inventor 2 window where my application is loaded. Now it says the companion, which is that window, is starting. Now it's verifying that this is working. It is working. And in a few minutes, what I should see is my app that I created. This is the Hello Kitty app. And when I click on Pet the Kitty now, I get my cat sound. It may be very faint in the background from you just because of my recorder that's using, but we'll try it again. So there's my cat. So that's how to run the emulator. And that concludes this part of this PowerPoint, or this demonstration.